Good morning, everybody. Jim Feist and Andy Isco for Proline TV on YouTube. Here we are, Andy. What a Sunday it was. We saw the Clippers. Well, that was on the day earlier.
Saturday
The
night, yeah.
Clippers not show up. Amazing.
And Houston must have been watching.
Pardon?
And Houston must have been watching.
Unbelievable. Yeah, because at least the Clippers have the firepower. Houston does not. And of course, in that game, of course, we didn't know Buddy Hield was going to be playing like he did in Oklahoma.
Yeah, that's true.
Best 3-point shooter in the world last night. That was incredible. We saw the Cleveland Cavaliers go down in game one, which was the first loss they've had this year in this playoff role. And
that was an ugly loss. The way that Indiana took control early, basically didn't let Cleveland back in the game, but Cleveland, as many really, really good teams do, make a run in the fourth quarter, actually got out, I want to say it was 103-101 with a few minutes to go. And then Indiana said, okay, we took your best punch. We're now going to deliver our best punch. And they did. The Pacers were clearly the better team. What's interesting enough, because I was just checking the series price, that was about minus 500, minus 450 to 500 for Cleveland before game one. They are still a pretty solid favorite, minus 250, despite being down 0-1 at home. So I think that a lot of people are looking at it. Well, it was one of those games yesterday, and we'll see the real Cleveland team show up. But as you and I were texting, they really miss Garland. I mean, he's a 20-point per game scorer, and that clearly was missing last night as the other guys were struggling.
Well, yeah, they lose their sixth man because their sixth man has to step in for Garland, so that's a big loss. But no excuses. They just didn't come out with the firepower early. Got down, they trailed pretty much the whole way. You know, we're looking at some big numbers here. Every game you're looking at 9 on Boston over the Knicks. You're looking at Oklahoma City 9.5 over Denver. You're Cleveland 9.5 over Indiana, which is the second game of that series. Minnesota, this is actually the lowest line, 6.5, 7 over Golden State. That's on Tuesday. And on Wednesday, well, they have a lineup actually. It's funny, but they have a lineup for the second game at Boston 8.5 over New York, but they haven't even played the first game. But that's some books do that. They'll allow you to have those kind of situations.
They'll take those lines down or that line down before the start of game one. But if you want to bet game two before game one is played, they'll that's a 50-50 proposition without knowing the results of game one, whether it's a reasonable line in game two. But they have the 11-10 edge. Why not put it up there?
Yeah, you're right. Let me take this. I got the wrong thing up here, but that wasn't a good idea, I guess. There's some headlines you're talking about: injuries, bad shooting, crushed Cavs, who had no answer for Tyrese Halliburton and Nembhard. You got the Nuggets and Thunder, scouting reports, matchups. There's lots of great information. The Pacers had a game plan that showed complete understanding of the Cleveland defense. They anticipated Cavs overplaying, particularly from the weak side. They changed their style, and Cleveland didn't have an answer.
Well, the thing I'll point out is if you remember at the end of the regular season, of course, the game doesn't mean anything other than gives you maybe a little bit of confidence, but Indiana beat Cleveland in double overtime on the last game of the regular season. So they were pretty well familiar with the personnel that Cleveland has, even though the game really, I don't think it meant anything to Indiana. I know it didn't mean anything to Cleveland because they had already been number one, but I think Indiana was still there. Maybe they had already clinched the number 4 seed that they could not have moved up and clinched with the Knicks, who they were right there with a game or so behind. But that I think that sometimes gives you confidence because you're going up against the one of the two favorite teams. I guess you could sort of say Cleveland had the best record. Boston has the pedigree as defending champs, and they're now healthy with Holiday being cleared to play. That they can compete with the best, and we saw it. We saw it last night. And if I'm Cleveland, I'm not concerned. But let's see how Cleveland comes out in Game 2 because of it's kind of like the Clippers and the Nuggets. The Clippers they didn't win Game 1, but they were leading the whole way. That game went to overtime, and Denver won. And then Denver came out and blasted and beat them in Game 2, and then the Clippers go home in Game 3, and it was a different Clippers team that we saw. Now, of course, Cleveland is still at home. It's a little bit different because they did not win Game 1 despite a great effort by the opposition that ended up proving true as far as the Pacers win. If Cleveland is a championship quality team, or if Indiana is close but maybe not capable of winning the East, although they played for it last year, that we should see a good effort out of Cleveland. Having said that, and not knowing the status of Garland, who I guess right now is listed as questionable, that line of 9.5 seems way too high. Indiana's not going to concede. Well, we took one on the road. Indiana's going to go out there and say, hey, why not get a 2-0 lead and go home needing to win 2 out of 5?
Well, 9.5 is too big.
Yeah.
I'm looking at 4 books right now that just went from 9.5 to 10.
Yeah, well, shows how much we know as far as because you have to believe that that's sharp money betting that game. You would think this early.
I don't know that sharps would be betting this big of a number. I just don't.
I don't either. I'm just thinking in terms of who would be betting, such a long early in the morning, way before the public generally doesn't get involved because the public generally doesn't have the money or the account is balanced until they know the results of the games they've already got locked up.
Yeah, I mean, we got 2 games today. We haven't even spoken about. That game is on Tuesday. And
right.
So, I mean, it's, somebody maybe pushing the number up so they can come back with bigger money on the dog. We've seen that.
We've seen that a lot. Yeah, the follow the leader.
But let's talk a little bit about today's games. New York at Boston. We know New York came off the physical series with the Pistons. Boston had a pretty easy time of it. I mean, not as easy, but it was. They ran up against Orlando, and Orlando put up some defense. But the Knicks, I mean, they went down to the last second, and the miracle, unbelievable beast in Brunson, who's amazing what he does. But Boston has handled New York this year. I think they won every game they played this season. I believe
going back a couple of years, they've dominated the Knicks.
This is the one game where we've actually seen the total be bet down. This is the only one that I've seen bet down. Went from opened 214.5, 213 out there, 212.5. This is the only one that's been bet down. Now, Boston does like to control. They do shoot a lot of threes. I mean, there was one game they shot 61 threes, which is incredible. They made 29 of them. That's remarkable also.
Yeah, in its own right.
Yeah. But if New York is a tired team, and they should be somewhat. I mean, they finished Saturday night. This is Monday. Yeah, they had Sunday off. But yeah, yippee, but they had to travel from Detroit back to New York, up to Boston. It wasn't exactly relaxing.
Didn't they wrap that series up on Thursday?
I thought it was.
I thought it was Thursday because I thought Saturday the only game was the Clipper game. I thought
maybe Friday. Was it Friday? Friday or Thursday? I'm not sure now.
I'm gonna check on that. I thought it was Thursday. That's what my notes have. Let's see. Thursday was May 1st. Yeah, Knicks win series 4-2.
Okay, so they won the series. So they had Friday, Saturday, and Sunday off.
Okay. And Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and it wasn't all that long of a plane ride back from Detroit to New York and New York to Boston. playing right
So
now.
what do you think about this? I mean, these big numbers. We're looking at huge numbers here. I'm not a big fan of laying big points, but there are spots, of course, where it's warranted.
I might take
However,
a look.
most sharps don't like betting big numbers.
I'm thinking, and let me see what the number is in the first half on Boston, because I would figure Boston might be a little rusty, but they also might want to take advantage of a team that they know that they can beat. Let me see what the first half line in this game. It's usually probably, I'm seeing basically fives out there. So I might end up going with Boston in the first half. If I win that bet, maybe I stay off the rest of the game. Then if they lose, if they, let's say they're down at halftime, Boston, they probably make for a good second half play. If they haven't covered, maybe I play them for the second half.
What's Boston's team total for the game?
That I don't know, but based on the spread for the game, you'd have
Probably
to say
110, something like that.
Well, 110, 101. Yeah, 110, 101, 111, 102. Yeah.
I might first of all, I lean to Boston to win the game.
Yeah.
I would rather lay it than take it, although I'm mostly a dog player. But I also like Boston to go over their team total. So what you just said, play Boston first half, then you had my team total over.
Yeah.
And then of course we don't talk a lot about this, but we probably should do a spot on this. In-game betting, which I did not bet the Houston Golden State game yesterday. We call it pre-flop, pre-game.
Yeah.
But during the game, I made some plays and won all of those. So the in-game betting is especially in the NBA, because there's so many swings.
Yeah,
these teams go on runs of 10, 15 points in a row. And, so that in-game betting is a very profitable way to approach. Excuse the background noise from the dogs. I can't do anything about it because they don't listen.
Oh, you're an underdog player. Let them have their say.
Oh my God,
the dogs.
Yeah, it's and obviously every time I get on these podcasts or a telephone call, they start yapping.
Well, the thing is, with the in-game playing, that's almost a lot of people will actually not do anything pre-game. They say, why should I do something pre-game when there's total uncertainty as to how these teams are going to come out and look, when I'm going to have multiple opportunities, 2 or 3, 4 each quarter to get involved if I want to get involved. So there's no longer a need to really make a play before the game starts, unless you just happen to have a solid opinion. Like I think we talked about it the other day. I liked Denver in the first half on Saturday. That worked. I liked Houston in the first half Sunday. That did not work. But I felt very comfortable about those plays. Not that I needed to make them and then go on from there. That might be the same thing. Maybe I won't get involved with Boston first half. They're very well rested, but they just have such a way of taking care of the Knicks. The concern I have is the total going down, but maybe that indicates something about Boston defensively, because they do take so many threes, and the more threes you take, the more of the opportunities you have to get 3 instead of 2, which would tend to lean towards an over on a total on a team or in a game. You like the over, I think, on the Boston side, but if you expect a lot of threes to be taken, that generally would favor playing over in a game, unless you think the opposition is going to be so stifled by the favorite Celtics here that even the fact that you're looking at a game with a lot of threes, I'd have to think that was taken into account, Boston's propensity to shoot threes in making that total, which does seem a little bit low overall when you think about it in the modern NBA.
It does. There still be the physicality of the Pistons-Knicks game. Also, is another issue that you look at. Not every series is that physical. That was a physical series.
Yes. And
that takes out of you too, because these guys are getting knocked around. I mean, how many times did you see Brunson laying on the floor? And it's just, it takes. I mean, they're humans. I mean, they play.
And it shows up late in games, fourth quarter.
It does. And Sharps.
Oh, by the way, and the other thing, just as a tangent here, Thibodeau plays his players, his starters, an awful lot. So you combine that with the physical toll that the Detroit series may have taken, and depending upon where it is, maybe Boston as a fourth quarter play would also make sense, especially if it's a close game.
And I just saw one place jump to 9.5 on it. So
Back down.
we're getting more. Granted, the public likes favorites. The public likes overs. This game was bet under. That would have been sharp money.
Yeah,
It's the only way that would have gone. So you're probably looking at an underplay, and maybe Boston's the right side.
In fact, I'm just seeing right now at one of those major offshore places. I was seeing a few places locally. That's also just back down to 9.
Okay, I got 9 minus 15, 9.5, 9.5 minus 05, 9 minus 14, 14, 12. I've got everything leaning to higher than 9.
Yeah.
So that's and that's indications. And we're reading the boards like the tote board at a racetrack. I mean, you're trying to figure it out who's making these bets, but it's mostly at this stage. And when you early bet on the under, that had to be sharp.
Yeah.
There's no public money coming in on an under early on an NBA game, especially this year because these games are flying over. Next game is Denver, who we just saw have a unbelievable game against Clippers. I mean, the Clippers, I don't know what the hell they were doing, but they didn't show up. And
Harden did not play well and didn't feel like talking about it after the game, and I understand why.
Why? Oh,
he was just very upset that
he's had a history. He's had a history of not showing up in game sevens. Jokic didn't have a particularly great game. Yeah, he distributed the ball a lot, had a lot of assists and other things, but his scoring was not astronomical. But they, at one point in the game, they were up 33 points.
Yeah, they looked very good, and you can't really say that it's baked into the number in tonight's game because they're huge underdogs in tonight's games. And you had thought that after that impressive performance against a Clippers team that a lot of people thought were going to beat Denver despite not having the home court advantage, Denver very impressive. You thought that maybe you wouldn't see this line open because Denver's not exactly Oklahoma City has been a great team. They've won, I think, like 50-something games by double digits this year of the 68 that they've won. But this line does seem a little bit high, but I'm not comfortable taking those points pre-game.
Well, no, and this when did they finish their season? What was it? What day was that?
OKC won their series.
I'm talking about
Saturday the 26th.
Okay, so here's Monday. So they've had one day.
No, the 26th. That's they've had 9 days.
No. I'm at Denver.
Oh, Denver, yeah. Denver's coming right back after 2 days, and Oklahoma City's been sitting there for a week and a half almost.
Yeah, and we're leaning to go into 10 on some spots here. So, and with their propensity for blowing people up, they've had 72 victories. There's a couple things going on with Denver. We're getting a tremendous play from Westbrook.
Mm-hmm.
He's always been a great athlete, and he's always brought a lot of energy and attitude. And he's a teammate. But all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he actually can shoot. I don't know where the hell this is coming from.
He's actually been revitalized as much for Denver as Jimmy Butler has been, the old veteran pro as well, and what he's done with Golden State. These old guys can still play, and we're seeing it really in all sports. Guys are now playing well into their late 30s and early 40s.
Well,
I don't think he's quite that old yet, but
in basketball, you do have the load management, which is the idea is to save these guys for later in the season. So, and they are doing that. And back in the day when Larry Bird and Magic were playing, if you sat them on the bench for 5 minutes, they'd kick your ass. They didn't want to come out of the game.
Coach would be fired by
yeah, that's exactly right.
An hour after the game time for even thinking that idea.
So when you look at this game, you're looking at a potential blowout, and the game went from 23.5 to 23.5 to 226. Pretty much everywhere you get some 225s and a half. So this game was bet over. Now, the danger of that is if it's a blowout, a lot of times they soften up in the end. But these games this year, and this is remarkable because normally when you get the season, the series will start out lots of points, up and down, fast pace. And as the series goes on, game 6, game 7, you'll start to see them tighten up a little bit because it's, you mess up, you're going home. So they play a little bit more defense. They don't run as much. The officials don't call as many ticky-tack fouls. But that's not what's happening. That was old thinking. But as of this year, and maybe even the end of last year in the playoffs, these end game play, I mean, they're going over the total like crazy. And so in this case, the early money came in and bet the over, and that was sharp money. Took it from 23 to 26. That was sharp money. So that actually makes more sense when you're thinking about playing the favorite to have the total go up rather than down, because but so that kind of belies what happened in the Knicks game.
Yeah, because
so,
you're forcing the trailing team in a game with a 10-point spread to just keep shooting and shooting off, and especially earlier in the fourth quarter, if they're behind by 8-10 points, maybe they change their game plan. And then Denver, of the 20 teams that made it to the postseason, they are certainly from a measurement of points, which would be related to pace. They were one of the weaker defensive teams as far as points allowed, which translates into pace as well. So Oklahoma City could be very well able to extend that lead. And you do have to wonder that maybe, again, if you like Denver's chances at all, even though they're tired, maybe that doesn't show up until the second half. So maybe the inflated line could suggest maybe you take a shot if you want on Denver in the first half, because, they just played 2 nights ago, but teams are used to playing with just one day off throughout the season. And Oklahoma City might be a bit rusty, that it might take them a half to get their rhythm. And that's when the fatigue shows up on Denver playing that 7-game series and Oklahoma City being rested. So maybe Oklahoma, if you're rooting for things, maybe you root for a close game at halftime, and then you come in on Oklahoma City for the second half.
This could be analogous to what happened with Cleveland. Both of those teams won by a lot of points against they swept their series. And this team has been sitting. Now, sometimes resting is good, sometimes it's not. In this case, maybe Oklahoma City comes out a little bit rusty. They're not hitting threes, and they're not quite as sharp as they otherwise would be. So, going along with what you're saying there makes sense, actually. Now we could go on to look at a little bit of the Tuesday matchups.
By the way, if I recall correctly, the gap between the rest between Cleveland and Indiana, I believe, was just one day. I think Cleveland swept on Monday, the 28th, which was a week ago today. And I think it was the very next night when they were playing the 5th game of their series in Indiana. That was the overtime game. They beat Milwaukee. So both of those teams had basically all but 1 day's difference in rest, and they had like 4 or 5 days rest playing from Monday to Sunday, Tuesday to Sunday. I think it would be a lot different when you talk about the huge difference between Oklahoma City's rest and Denver's rest, where it might be much more effective, more affecting the Denver Nuggets coming out maybe competitive early, and then Oklahoma City shaking off the rust.
Good point. I could not, in good conscience, lay 10 points with Denver. Or with Cleveland in this next game on Tuesday. I can't. Indiana is the way they close the season, the way they're playing, well coached. I could not lay 10 points with Cleveland over Indiana. I mean, I know when you're talking about zigzag, they lost their home court. The next time they're going to come back. But that is just too big a number for me.
I think the approach that I will take, and let me see what the number is. The number is Cleveland laying 6 in the first half. That's the way that I would look, because I think Cleveland has to come out and say, you guys bullied us in game one. We were not the team that we expected to be. We're going to come out and take charge early. And then maybe Indiana makes a little run later or whatever at a different number. But I look for situations where teams were, I guess you'd have to say, embarrassed. And then they're coming back. They're playing on their home court once again, and they want to get out to a quick start and not let Indiana carry the momentum over from game one to game two. So I could see maybe even a first quarter bet on Cleveland rather, or certainly a first half bet.
I can see that. Line, the total has not moved in this game. It was 229.5, which was the same number it was in game one, and it has not moved at all.
And it ended up 33 in game one, so that's not that far off from what the total was.
Correct. Now, the one thing I will say about that, Garland did not play in that game, and he is an up-tempo guy. Yep. And it takes away your sixth man, because the sixth man ends up playing a lot more minutes. And if Garland is back, and that is a question mark, we think that he will be. Yeah. Especially after they lost game one. This makes this game very critical. So I expect Garland to come back. What do you think? How does his being on the floor more affect the total?
I think it would tend to be over. I mean, keep in mind, he averaged slightly over 20 points per game in 75 games. He averaged slightly under 7 assists per game. So you take the 20 points per game and the 14 points from the assists. There's a guy 34 points. That's not that's slightly responsible for a little bit under 1/3 of all the points that Cleveland would normally score. So I think his presence or his absence is huge, and I think maybe we won't know until just before game time. Maybe we get some reports about people who have some insights into practice, let's say what they're doing today as far as making adjustments, because you figure Cleveland's going to have to do something, and they have to be prepared. I don't think they were prepared for Garland's absence yesterday and the extent to which it took away from what they do. Because if you're a 20-point per game scorer, you're a significant contributor to a team's offense. And then when you add in that he's also good at dishing out the assists, you might want to wait and see what happens. But I think regardless of whether he plays or not, I still expect Cleveland to come out extremely aggressive in the first half, and certainly the first quarter.
I agree with that. Again, I'm not laying 10 points, but I can see your point, how you can deal with this.
Yeah. But it's like I was talking about. I liked Houston in the same thing with Denver the night before. I said I liked the first half because I expected those teams to come out strong, but figured, especially in the Denver Clipper game, that game was basically a pick-em. Who knows who's going to win in the end game? I'd rather cash where I feel more comfortable, which was the first half. Now, it worked in the Denver game, and of course, they ended up continuing to win, extend in the second half. It did not work in the Houston game, where the line was not much different than the line in the Clippers game, 1.5 in the Denver game, 2.5 in the Houston game. But I think that's the situation that I feel more comfortable with, especially in the case of Denver going up against a Clipper team that most people consider talent-wise was the better team, capable of playing well at the end. And then again yesterday with Houston and Golden State, where I figured, okay, Houston's best opportunity to cash, I thought, would be in the first half, because we know the pedigree of Golden State, and we would expect them to make a run if they needed to. And, of course, they didn't need to, but by the same token, when you don't need to, it means you're also preventing your opponent from making the run that they need. So that did not surprise me about Golden State once I lost the first half line on Houston, and we didn't need Golden State to make a run. We just needed them to preserve it. I could see the same thing in that game tomorrow that we're talking about, as far as how that game unfolds.
Going to our last game that we'll discuss for this show is Golden State and Minnesota. Golden State had 2 chances to close Houston out, and they got blown out in both games. Then a lot of people didn't know, what the hell are we looking at here with Golden State? If they lost their legs, or they're too old, are they just not big enough down low, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Is Houston going to be the team that's going to start to emerge? They had great defense on Curry. Thompson was doing a fantastic job in that area. And a lot of people, including myself, thought maybe it's time to just sit back and watch, because I did not bet the game pre-flop and made some in-game betting, which turned out well. But now Minnesota's been sitting. They both have the same identical 53 victories on the year. The game opens 5.5. It's up to 7 in most places. It went from 207.5 to 209. Minnesota's a good team. Last year they did beat Denver in the playoffs, and now here they are sitting at home laying 7 points to Golden State. My feeling on this is that Golden State is an older team, not as deep as you would like them to be, but if Buddy Hield is going to play like he played in Oklahoma and just be the best three-point shooter in the entire world for a game, which he was yesterday. That was remarkable what he was doing. He couldn't miss. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And then, of course, you have Steph there. He's not going to – no, Minnesota doesn't have anybody to clamp down on Steph.
To contain him, yeah.
Yeah, like Thomas did for Houston. He played remarkable defense on him, and it made a big difference in several of those games. This is interesting because I think we're truly looking at an aging club here with Golden State that had 2 chances to close out Houston, who's a much younger, inexperienced club, and they ended up getting blown out in both of them. Game 7, yes, they came back. They are who they are and always were. The pedigree was there. The experience was there. The coaching was there. Kerr made some great adjustments, and they won the game rather easily, actually. So that's what we're looking at with this one. This is the one, and it's a more reasonable line. Not, it opened 5.5, but that tells you the odds makers, when they're making this game open 5.5, yeah, the money came in on the favorite, but the odds makers were saying, well, maybe Golden State is really back. I'm saying they might really be tired in this game.
I was thinking about that because that's the normal way to think, and then I take a look at the minutes that these players played yesterday for Golden State, because I like the fact that Golden State came out, took care of business. Game 5 was a throwaway game, or Game 6, I guess, was Game 5 was the throwaway game. I think that they ended up knowing that they had 2 more chances.
5 was down in Houston, then they went back home. Yeah,
right. The Hield yesterday was the one who played 33 minutes. Butler played 20. Green played 16. Curry played 22. I'm sorry. I'm reading the points. They all played more minutes than I thought. Butler played 44. Green played 39. Curry played 45. So they played a lot in the game, even though they had a comfortable lead for much of the second half in that game. And I was surprised that they played as much as they did. I would have taken them out, given them rest, because they knew game 1 of this series was going to be Tuesday. They knew they were going to have basically 48 hours of rest and not an extra couple of days. The 48 hours of rest is twofold. Number one, obviously you're playing 48 hours later. Number 2, you're not having an opportunity to do as much breaking down of your opponent that you might do if you had 3 or 4 days where, you don't know who you're going to play, and you're going to be able to prepare for both teams that are going 7 games, for example. So normally I would think, again, that Golden State still knows how to win the games. I'm not sure I feel that comfortable laying the big number. This is probably a game tomorrow that I want to see how the game starts out early. Is Golden State showing signs of fatigue? I would have liked to have said, when I was reading those points numbers, I was hoping I was reading minute numbers, because those would have reflected that Golden State did what I thought they should have done, given the way the game unfolded, and that is rest their starters because they got to play so soon. And they know that they're an aging team, and they have a lot of extra games played under their belts going back the last 7-8 seasons in the postseason. So I'm sort of a little perplexed on what to do, if anything, before the game, but rather look for opportunities in game. In fact, the best thing that I would like to see, and maybe we'll see it, is I'd like to see Golden State show a lot of energy early. Maybe Minnesota gets down by 6-7 points, and maybe you get a chance to play Minnesota from that point for the rest of the game at nearly a pick 'em or maybe laying 2 or 3 for the game, expecting that the fatigue factor is going to show up more late than it will early, and that you would expect Golden State to maybe play a little bit better early despite the rest. Again, these guys are used to playing 48 hours apart.
The Golden State Warriors, there's a similarity between them and the Los Angeles Lakers, who Minnesota just beat. Neither one of those teams have much to offer down low defensively or offensively. Minnesota has all of those things going for them. It was a mismatch against the Lakers, who have LeBron and Luka and some other role players, Reeves and stuff like that. Reeves is not a role player. He's a good player. He's a starter. But Golden State coming off 2 blowout losses, 1 blowout win. However, Houston did come back and make that a game, even though they were down. So they had to recover and put it back together again, and they got an exceptional night out of Buddy Hield. I don't know if we can get that again. Most likely not. His history doesn't show that he's that consistent.
The one guy I think also is key for Minnesota is Gobert. I mean, he comes up big at times, and I think that we saw that in the Lakers series, and that may be something that Golden State could have difficulty with.
They're going to have a lot of difficulty with it because he is a monster. He's very, very talented at what he does. This is the one game I feel comfortable with the favorite. The number is not 10, and the total open 207.5. It's up to 209, 208.5. 208.5 most places, but there's a 209 out there as well. So I'm thinking Minnesota's the right side of this game for a lot of reasons. The matchups down low, the fatigue issue on Golden State, the age of Golden State, the depth of Golden State, which they do not have quality depth. They have depth. I mean, they got a lot of guys that can put the floor, but they're not the same as the guys they start. The quality is much lower. So I think that's a weakness, and Minnesota doesn't have that problem. They have a lot of depth, and they're big, and they got some outside shooters that can stretch the defense and work underneath a lot, because if they're hitting their outside shots and Golden State's got to come out, it leaves it underneath a lot there, and you're not going to get that much out of Golden State around the boards, rim protecting otherwise.
Exactly, and the concern that there are 2 factors that you mentioned, and they're sort of related, but not necessarily so, and that's fatigue and aging. You can be an aging team, but you don't necessarily show fatigue early on. The concern for me comes in for Golden State is the combination of the fact that they had 3 opportunities to eliminate Houston after being up 3-1, which wouldn't have affected the aging, but it would have affected the fatigue factor entering this series, because they would have had 4 or 5 extra days to rest and not have to play the games 6 and 7. And especially after they lost game 5 and unable to go back home and win in game 6, which would have still given them 2 or 3 extra days than the 1 day in between that they have. So that is a concern for Golden State. The question is, we saw in what was it? I guess it was the Friday night game 6 that Golden State was not able to come back in that game, and they ended up losing that game. I think it was by 7 or 8 points. So that's a concern that maybe we are seeing the effects of the combination of aging and fatigue. And you're absolutely right that the worst possible situation could be getting a nice rested Minnesota team that does have some physical advantages because of the inside presence or lack of it for Golden State, and the fact that they're coming back just 48 hours later. The one mitigating factor, which I thought would have been reflected by not having played, is the fact that they did play so many minutes in a game where they were basically in control start to finish on Sunday, yesterday. Had they not done that, I would have felt a lot more comfortable and possibly giving Golden State a bit of a look pre-game for game 1, because they would have been fresh. They would have effectively played most of their guys back. They would have played on Friday night would have been game 6, where they saw more minutes than they would have in game 7, but they didn't do that. Excuse me. They played like a regular game that was going to go down to the wire with all those minutes. So I think that that's another reason perhaps to look for Minnesota to get off to an early start once they get the rust off. And maybe it's a first half play because maybe Minnesota comes out rusty in the first quarter, and then after getting into their rhythm, they can take it to Golden State right before halftime.
I agree with you. But this one Tuesday. This might other than Boston over their
Game
total.
total.
Their total. This might actually be one of my better plays. I like the Wolves here.
You like a full game?
Yeah, full game Wolves to crush the Warriors. I really see that. There was like a tip off. Okay, we might have overread it going up against a weaker offensive team and a less experienced team with the Rockets. But even the Rockets came back, even though they were down the whole damn time. They came back and made it a 3-point game at one point. And then Golden State had to step on the gas again. But
which takes added energy, by the way. It takes added energy when you have to all of a sudden gear it up again after relaxing.
Yeah, they had to re-energize themselves to come back and put them away. Now, short trip to go from Houston back to Golden State up to Minnesota. There's travel time involved in that. That's fatiguing as well.
I'm wondering if they may not be going right to. I don't know. Did they say they're going to Golden State or they're going right to Minnesota? Eliminate one trip.
I do not know that. I'm not sure
about that. But no, the thing with Minnesota and Golden State and why your full game play makes sense in this situation. Doesn't matter whether you win a game or lose a game by 1 or by 21. It's still a loss. And it might very well be that because Golden State played so many minutes on Sunday, if they find themselves down big time in game 1 in Minnesota, maybe they relax a little bit. They rest their players because they're going to come back. I think game 2 would be what? Thursday night. Thursday night, Tuesday, Thursday. Just concede the game. Minnesota continues to play. Maybe they put their reserves in who's still trying hard or whatever it is. And all of a sudden, what had been like a 10-point, maybe let's say a 15-point lead with 9 minutes to go becomes a 25-point win.
Correct. Andy, great job today. I hope the viewers, listeners, please subscribe and like Proline TV on YouTube, of course. And Andy, we'll talk to you probably tomorrow for baseball.
Yeah, sounds good. We'll have a decent schedule on Monday, but everybody will be in action on Tuesday, weather permitting, and look forward to it.
Have a good one. Good luck, everybody out there. We'll talk to you soon.
Good luck, guys and gals.